the roller coaster of emotions that come with losing a beloved pet. Having to make that difficult decision. Is it time or isn't it? The 5 stages of grief. Are our pets replaceable? How do we deal with this and overcome grief and loss for our pets? What about decisions surrounding euthanasia? Dealing with the guilt of that? Can we ever arrive at a place of acceptance? Dealing with the loss of our pets. It's a conversation I've had many times over the years with many people. It's an experience I've been through many times with my own animals. And I wanted to do a YouTube segment on it, and I had my whole outline prepared, and it occurred to me that I actually had some clips from my TV show up in New Jersey that I had about 5 years ago, back in 2014, where we did an entire show on pet loss and bereavement. So instead of boring you with just sitting here listening to me, I'm going to show you clips from that show back in 2014 with a friend of mine, Joe Dwyer, and we discuss all aspects of pet loss, grief, and bereavement. I guess you could say it's a sensitive topic, and we're changing gears a little bit from where we were last month, where we were talking more about spirituality, and we'll throw in and mix in some spirituality and religion may very well come up during tonight's show. But tonight's sensitive topic is about bereavement. And last month's show I highlighted that we will be talking about pet bereavement, which is, some people, they segregate pets and people and the loss of their loved ones. And, that is certainly everyone's individual prerogative. And tonight we're going to bring you some perspective on dealing with the loss of your 4-legged loved one or your winged loved one or whatever your pet that you had at home that you may have lost, and what people go through when they do grieve the loss of their beloved pets. And we have a very special guest tonight, Joe Dwyer. He's a motivational speaker and author. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Always good to be with you, Jeff. We always have a good laugh and a good time when we're together. Now tonight, as you said, it's a little bit of a sensitive subject, but we'll still try to lighten it up and hopefully educate and inspire some people through some of the difficult times in their life. But it's a pleasure to be here always.
So pet bereavement, I mean, when I think about pet bereavement and what pets mean to us, and we've talked about this a lot, and my life is animals, especially with whether it's my dog training or my holistic pet shop and my pit bull rescue. Animals are my life. My parrots, my cats, I love them dearly. I love them like my children. I've lost animals, and how I feel about my animals, and there are millions and millions of people out there that they aren't always afforded the opportunity to have other pet lovers buy them. Instead, they're sometimes faced with people that say, oh, it's just a dog. It's just a cat. You're crying over a bird? I mean, these are some things that I think people don't realize, that, at least it's my belief, that, what our pets mean to us, bereavement is bereavement. Grief is grief. I mean, can you talk a little bit about grief in general and how, what your take is on grieving a person versus grieving a pet?
Well, certainly. I know you said it in the intro, and you just referred to it again. And it is true that, unfortunately, in some parts of our society and in some people's minds, it's a disenfranchised loss. As you said, people will say, unfortunately, because of the lack of ability to know what to say, they're going to say, oh, no, it was just a dog. You can get another one, right? Because it's an awkward moment for them. They really don't know what to say. When my Rommel passed almost 2 years ago, and I miss him probably as much today as I did that day, a lot of people said to me, well, you do have 4 others, so you're okay, right? And again, it comes from that place of really not knowing exactly what to say, so they're going to say something. It's unfortunate. But the reality is I think we're still educating our society, like a lot of things we are, and I think our society will continue to be more educated, because the loss of this beloved animal is really made as close as possible, and I hope I don't get any criticism for this, but I'm going to say it because it's true. It's almost as similar to the loss of a child, and you mentioned they're like your children. And there's a philosophy behind that, because no matter how old you are as a parent, if you're 80 years old and your child is 60, your mindset is you're supposed to take care of that child for your entire life. And when they pass, it's very difficult. It's the same concept or philosophy with the loss of an animal. You're supposed to take care of that animal for their entire life. You have to feed them. You have to take care of their needs. Even though they take care of us in a great way, you have to take care of them. And because of that, when they do pass away, it is that much of a difficult loss in your life.
It's interesting that you bring that up because, I just know from talking about grief and the subject, talking to parents, that one of their greatest fears is that their child predeceases them.
That's right.
And, so I guess in a sense, that's really what's happening when pets die because, unfortunately, unless you have, large parrots like I do, and they'll probably outlive me.
That's right.
Most of our animals, are going to pass away before us.
Yeah. Very true. And, because of that, and because of the fact that this is a very strong bond we form with our animals, let's face it, we do. We form this very strong bond. And every bond is different. So, it is a strong bond, but every strong bond is different than your strong bonds and my strong bonds with that relationship. But the stronger the relationship, the more difficult the loss.
Sure.
So the other thing that really, I always say to people, when in doubt, say less, because you don't know some of the things that you might say innocently or you think are being healing in nature, and they're not. Very similar situation is if we both had a mother, right? Your mother passes away, and then years later, my mother passes away. And you come and say to me, I know what it feels like. Right. Well, no, you don't, because my relationship with my mother could have been drastically different than yours. Same with a pet, So there's things to say and there's things not to say. The best thing to say is, I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm here for you, and have a sense of understanding.
And and we've had this conversation in the past as well. And I've always, historically have been one of those people where I know what you're going through. And at a superficial level, I may have an idea of the logistics of what they're going through, but to know really what that person feels deep down inside, I think like you said, it's really an individual thing.
It is.
And it's based on that particular individual and the individual relationship with their pet.
That's exactly
How their pet died. What were the circumstances surrounding their pet's death? We were talking before the show. I had a Shih Tzu that passed away in our living room. Very sad. Found her body. I cried. It was sad. My healing time was so much faster because she died peacefully. Whereas I had other pets where I had to make the decision, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a few minutes. But you don't always know what someone's going through. I think that's what I get out of what you just told me, and that's important advice.
It is, and what you say, I know what you're going through. That just a slight change to that is, I have a sense of I have a sense of what you're going through.
Right.
I kind of understand, but your situation is unique to you, and I'm here for you. So that the person understands, because it's a unique. It's as unique as a fingerprint.
And that's what I got from you a few years back when we first started talking about pet loss. And I had many opportunities since then, unfortunately, because I'm surrounded by animal people. And my presentation to them is, I've been through this before, and if I can be of any help, I'm here.
Right.
Whereas I'm not saying, hey, I know what you're going through with your pet and your love. It's more about, look, I've been through something similar. If I can be of help, I'm here for you. Is that a better presentation?
Most definitely. Okay. It really is. And there's sometimes it's just good to just give the person an embrace, a touch on the shoulder, but something, as you just said, is certainly would probably be received better.
Okay, right. Okay, great. So when I think of grief, and there's so many things that come into my mind and things to process when we're faced with death and decisions that have to be made, either beforehand or afterwards or whatever the case may be. You know, the first thing that pops into my head is, you know, historically I've always been exposed to the 5 stages of grief. You know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I know you have a little bit different outlook. You know, I mean, I hear 5 stages of grief, and just the way my particular mind works, I'm like, okay, I got to go to step 1, and then I got to go to step 2. And, you know, can you talk a little bit about the 5 stages of grief? Because I'm sure a lot of people out there have been exposed to these words that I was talking about.
Well, the best way I could describe it is there is no pattern whatsoever. It's a really, the best way to think about it, and everybody can relate to this that has experienced this type of loss in their life, it's a roller coaster of emotions. Only this roller coaster doesn't just go up and down, it goes in several different directions as well. It goes all over, and it really wrecks with your whole emotions. Mm-hmm. So I've had many people say to me, you know, I'm still angry at losing my dog. That's not right. And my answer to them is always the same. It's right because you're feeling it. And it is okay, you know? So to go from the first stage, which is denial, to anger, back to denial, jump ahead to depression, and then back to anger is more normal than anything else. So the best thing to do is to accept your emotions for what they are, acknowledge them, talk to somebody about them. Now, there is one footnote I should put on this, is that if you are in extremes on these behaviors, then nobody who's trained in pet bereavement counseling like myself or anybody else can help you. Then, you know, there are situations where you do need professional help if there are extreme behaviors. Sure. But if you're going through the emotions, you're going through them at, you know, whatever
the natural course of grief.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then you should just accept where you're at and where you're going. And if you have somebody you can speak to them. You know, open up. That's probably the best, maybe universal advice, is to at least express your emotions to somebody.
And I mean, I find that, you know, obviously I rely on prayer and meditation a lot, and that's from a religious and spiritual standpoint, and also surrounding myself with, you know, not just pet-centric people, but spiritually minded individuals as well to help me through that process. I mean, can you talk a little bit about relying on someone's faith, for instance, to help with bereavement?
Well, definitely, and you just said it very well, and that too is a very individual thing. You know, what part of your faith, or depending on what your faith speaks to you and how it speaks to you, and your specific spirituality, but then it comes down to, well, what parts of it are going to assist you? You know, don't just say, well, now I have to go right into my faith denomination and stay here. No, stay in the places that are going to give you the best healing. Yeah. You know, now again, nothing destructive, but, you know, it doesn't, you know, spirituality to one person might be taking a walk outside and experiencing nature and, you know, good sunshine. For another person, it might be kneeling in prayer for an hour. But what works for one may not work for another. So accept what might be healing you and go with that.
I mean, that's why I think this topic is, I mean, it hits so many people because, you know, there's no one religious belief that is going to be affected by the loss of an animal.
Exactly.
So I think it's important that, you know, and especially if we're put in a position to help others, is to understand that, you know, and it's funny, the last couple of shows we did, we keep talking about the journey that we're all on, and it comes up again. It seems every topic we're talking about, to aid people in their individual journey when they're going through whatever. Yeah. So.
And this is a journey.
Yeah.
You know, it's a journey, but it's an undefined journey, and it's an uncertain journey. Yeah. And you just have to accept what it is, but it doesn't mean that you can't, you know, look for what helps you, like I said, and talk it out. The other common thing, you know, and talk about the journey, is the belief that some people believe to get a dog, or if it was a dog that passed, to get a dog right away, and who says to wait a certain amount of time. There's no answer there. Yeah. I'll be very open and say that I've waited too long in the past, and I know some people who have to get another one right away. But what is helping you? You know, so we're going to bring in the judgmental word now. Don't be judgmental on anybody's actions. Whatever they're going to do that they feel is really healing to themselves, let them do it.
Now, we talked a little bit about, obviously, prayer or taking a walk in nature or whatever someone's spiritual or religious foundation is to help them through things. Are there other tools at people's disposal where, you know, they can seek support or do things on their own that can help them through the process of grieving?
Definitely. I'm president of the organization known as the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement. The website is aplb.org, and on our website you will find many resources. We have memorials that we set up with beautiful pictures and words that you could say about your loved, beloved pet. We have chat rooms also we have trained pet bereavement counselors that are in the chat rooms every night. Not every night. I think there's one night we don't have them. I think it's Thursday, if my memory serves me correct, but it is on the website. And there's at least 3 people in there to assist you to walk through this journey of grief that you're on.
Okay. I mean, for our viewers out there who may not have internet access, is there some tools you could suggest and recommend right now?
Well, I would say that the founder of the APLB, Dr. Wallace Seif, wrote a wonderful book. It's called The Loss of a Pet. And when my dog passed away many years ago, and I was still struggling years later to process the grief that I was on, it was that book that helped me the most. Okay. And it led me to the APLB, and I guess there's no accidents, right?
Right, yeah, sure. Yeah. And I guess I've done a couple of things over the years. One of my favorite tools is writing. I'll write about my pets. I've written poems. I've just done like freehand writing of thoughts that just pop into my head, reminiscing. Yep. Sometimes I've blamed myself. I may be part of the grieving process. I've actually written those thoughts down so I don't keep them bottled up, because that could potentially be harmful to my spiritual conditioning. Do you have any thoughts on writing? And
no, I think that's a great option if you do choose that. Now, see it, journaling, writing, is it a wonderful tool for some people? Bring myself into this. For me, I would flat say absolutely not. I won't do that. But then again, years later, I might pick up and write a letter to Rommel or to Fritz. So again, it's all in the individual sense. Same thing with how you want to deal with the remains of your beloved pet. There brings in a whole another dynamic of what you might choose to do. Some people might have them buried. Some people might want to have the cremains and not have them back. Now with Rommel, it's very interesting. When I lost my dog growing up, I didn't even think I was in such a state of grief when he passed that I left his body and never brought it. And I beat myself up for years because of that. Right. So when Rommel passed away, I was certain that I made sure I got those cremains back. And I have to do this, right? Yeah. And there are the cremains, and I'm happy that I have them. And I have them in a little place, a little shrine built to him, and I sit with it, meditate in front of that sometimes. But it's not what it was all cracked up to be, you know? Right. So, sometimes you don't know what really might be good for you. It's a trial and error thing.
I have a funny story about cremains real quick before we before we move ahead. We lost a traumatic loss of ours was Adam, our pit bull, who passed away in 2004, and he passed away at 6 years of age. It was very traumatic for us. So we had him individually cremated, and I went online. I think I went to angelashes.com. I bought this beautiful $450 angel that we put his ashes in. And, all said and done, it was $800 and, of dust, really. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. Now, fast forward 2010, we lost a couple of pets along the way. By the time Jake died, and Jake was my favorite, okay? He was my boy. By the time Jake died, I said, Jake, sorry, you're just getting the plain box that they give us as part of the deal. All the animals I have, you're talking $400 or $500 a pop for an angel.
It can be very costly. You're right. And the truth is that the memories that you have of them, they're in your heart. Yeah. So you do, and that's probably what it is with me with Rommel. You touched on something earlier that, if you don't mind, I'll come back to.
Yeah, please.
When you mentioned about the you have those guilty feelings. That's very common when we are faced with that difficult decision of euthanizing our pet. And it matters not, I think this is an important point to make, it matters not how sick they are. It doesn't matter, and then of course the answer back when you tell somebody, gee, I feel so guilty, I had to make that decision, but it was the right thing to do. Well, I know it was the right thing to do, but it doesn't take away that guilt. And that is something that you really have to process. And it's something that really does separate us in most cases from a human loss, right? Because we are faced with this difficult decision. When I had to have Rommel euthanized, it was really hard. And it was the right time to do it. I knew that. I knew that. But it didn't make it any easier. And it's just part of that. So it's not a place, if we don't talk about it as a stage, which I've already given my opinion on that, that there's no such thing as the stages. But that's the guilt place that you need to get through it as quickly as you can. I would give that advice, because don't let that one linger on you.
Right, and that's a tough part. I mean, regardless of the stages and how they happen, we'll get on to the next quick subject in a minute, but how do people know that they've reached acceptance?
I think that when acceptance is reached, let's face it, what happens when you wake up each day? Not a day goes by that you think about this dog, or you use a dog, so we'll use Adam. Not a day goes by that you wake up, do you think about Adam, right? Right. So when he first passed, you probably had some more difficult thoughts than you did pleasant thoughts. Yes. The place of acceptance that I would define it as is that day when you wake up and you have 80% thereabouts good thoughts about Adam and 20% just difficult memories of what took place. Now you've reached that place of, you're at a state of peace. I don't know if I would call it acceptance. I'd call it a state of peace. Right. But that's where I'd say it is. When you tip over into that, having a better course of memories. It makes, and I think having clarity and understanding of the situation entirely. So, and that takes time and it takes work. Right. It does. It takes work to get there. For our viewers out there, thank you for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. We talked about the loss of loved ones, but our four-legged loved ones, and there's often a contrast between the loss of a person and the loss of a pet, but to me it's all the same, and I just feel that the grieving process is the grieving process. And talking to Joe Dwyer tonight really reinforced the fact that we need to embrace that process, not fight it, embrace it. We need to help each other, okay, and embrace everybody's journey, help everybody through it, and don't be closed-minded to the fact that they're just pets, because they're not. They're our loved ones, okay? And just keep that in mind when someone comes to you.